The main takeaway from people who didn't like this movie are religious people who thought this movie was just bashing religion. I feel like that was the point of this movie. I don't think you guys agree with me on that. I think this movie absolutely was taking shots at religion in general. And I think that if that was their intention, then it's not a negative, right? Even if you're religious, like if you're religious and you're like, this movie exists for this purpose, and they executed that purpose because here I am mad about it, that's not a negative.
Welcome in, everybody, to a horror movie review here on Hometown Ghost Stories on the HTGS YouTube page as well. I am your host, Rob Coakley, joined as always by Dave Wilkins.
Hello, Rob Coakley.
And by Jesse Wilkins.
Hi there.
And we are reviewing the 2024 film Heretic today, one that I've been waiting to review with these guys. We've all finally gotten to watch it. I'm excited to knock out this review. Maybe we'll do a little bonus at the end, put these guys on the spot and give our top 3 horror movies of 2024. But before we do that, Dave, I need a synopsis.
I can do that. Heretic 2024, directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. 2 young missionaries become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on the door of the diabolical Mr. Reed. Trapped in his home, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. So I was late to the game with this movie. I had known it was out for a while. I had heard a lot of good things about it. I knew what it was about, but I just recently got around to watching it. And I will say this is definitely one of the better movies from 2024 as far as horror goes. Is it the best? I don't know. Probably not, but it is definitely, without question, the most thought-provoking, in my opinion. This movie I thought was gripping in the sense, just in like a philosophical sense, and the ideas they threw at you and the way they challenged different ways of thinking, I thought was very interesting. Add on top of that the suspense, the horror, and I thought it was really well put together. And you kind of had that A24 vibe of like really deep conversations and a lot of attention to the detail of the conversations and the dialogue between the characters. I thought was really well done. And there were a lot of scenes that were very suspenseful as well. And I very much enjoyed this movie.
No, I also enjoyed it. I thought it was a very tense movie. It kept you guessing to where you thought you knew where it was going to go, but you didn't. And it was shot really well. I thought the basement was extraordinarily creepy. I thought Hugh Grant was just the most perfect casting for this role. I thought he absolutely crushed it. He was such like a welcoming, likable character. And you just find out that he's got something very dark planned. Obviously, it's a horror movie, so it's not going to go well. But he was, he absolutely crushed this role.
And it's funny because he was great in retrospect. But if you pitched this idea to me, I'm like, here's a character we want to put in a horror movie. Who do you want for this movie? I never would have even thought of Hugh Grant. It's just not. It doesn't seem like a character he would ever play. But he was
right, which I think is why it was so convincing and so good. I mean, just the way he pulled this off, it was phenomenal. And there's a lot of layers to this. The way that this whole thing was written, it's kind of a confusing ending. If we didn't say it already, we're going to spoil this movie. So if you haven't seen it yet, it is relatively new. Make sure you check it out. If you don't want the movie spoiled for you, then come back and listen to our review. But we will go through it and try to dissect it and try to figure out what we thought happened at the end of this movie and what led to this strange ending and what happened.
So my thoughts on this movie before we start jumping into that, I think you nailed it. I think this movie would be good with other people. I think it's better because of Hugh Grant. I think his acting performance in this was phenomenal. The little things that he does with this character throughout, little just noises that he makes and facial expressions that he's doing as he's talking is just absolutely phenomenal. Just crushes it. One of my favorite horror acting experiences from recent times. Like I think he was perfect. I don't know who could have done it better after watching him do this role. So to your point, Dave, I don't think I would have thought of him to cast in it, but now I can't see anyone else in it. So I love that about it. I love that it's thought provoking, as you said, where I don't think that they're trying to take a singular stance in
Yes, they are.
any direction. Huh?
Yes, they are.
Do you think so?
Yep.
Because I don't, and we'll talk about that more. So that's on my second watch through, I sort of noticed that a little bit more going through it. So
I don't even think it was implicit. I think it was explicit. The point that they're trying to get across is there is no legitimate religion, and all religion is just a form of control, one way or another. If you can follow them all back, they're all the same in one way or another. They have different ideas and different ways of delivering their message, but every single one is about controlling people. And they literally said it.
well, I think that is Hugh Grant's stance. Like that is his character stance for sure. But I think you see the chinks in the armor on that throughout this movie as well.
You see a little bit, like you see the chink in the armor where he was trying to get his message across, and the girl called him out on it at one point in the movie when she was like, I think that you got a curveball. I think that you weren't expecting the I guess we're into it now, right?
Yeah,
You
we're
weren't
into it now,
expecting
guys.
you weren't expecting your decoy to say it's all fake, and now you're improvising, and that's when you kind of got that scene where he literally just had to improvise, and he started talking about hard solipsism, because there's no solution for hard solipsism. So when you start talking about that, there's no way to debunk it. So when he started talking about the simulation thing, and he pulled the microchip out of the girl's arm and whatnot, I feel like that was his only bulk in the entire film. So there was that, but it still ended up working to his end game, where he's like, he wanted her to be in that exact spot where the bicycle thing was on the doorknob, and it all worked out where he demonstrated that he did control everything.
So my pushback on that is I think you brought up the best example of the pushback and him being flustered and him sort of, when things I think the other message in this other than control is only allowable by the person if they're following what they want done. And once they start to resist, the control's gone. So I think if you go back and watch the movie again, you'll see other parts where Hugh Grant is a bit flustered because they're not responding the way that he wants them to. So it's not as noticeable in some of the earlier parts as it is. Like that one is the obvious one where he is just completely flustered. He's completely taking the turn. She calls him on it. I agree with that 100%.
Well, the
But I
other
think,
obvious one is when the girl, she starts calling him out and he slices her throat.
well, yes. I mean, we're just getting further into it there. But in the beginning, there's a few parts too, because he starts stammering in the beginning of the movie as well when he doesn't get the answer that he quite wants. So it goes, like both ways is what I'm saying. I think this movie, it's just really thought provoking, as Jesse said. I think it's one of the most thought provoking movies that I've watched. And when we start talking about the ending, I still think about the ending because I think there's so many different ways you can interpret the ending of this movie.
I think that if we're talking about how this movie is about control and how religion controls people, that you have two different types of people right now. You have you have Sister Barnes and you have Sister Paxton. And Sister Paxton was the one who was challenging his ideas, where Sister Barnes was more likely to be manipulated, right? She was more gullible and more, I don't even know if I want to say
I
gullible.
think you have this reversed, don't you?
I think so. Sister Barnes was kind of like the rebel who had the birth control in because she was breaking some rules there.
Yeah, if I got it wrong, whatever. Yeah, so the sister, Sister Paxton was the one who was the devout.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So she was the one who was more manipulable, and so when he started getting pushback from the other one, he started honing more in on Sister Paxton, and that's kind of like, I feel like how they're trying to push the point that if you're dealing with religious followers and you're getting pushback from some, go for the ones who are more easily manipulated.
Yeah, but I think that fails him in the end, because she still shows her faith throughout it, right? Like she still, and I think that's poignant when she's talking about the test that they did on people with prayers and stuff, where they did a control of people getting prayers, and it showed not to help, but she thought it was still beautiful, and that's why she has faith and stuff, and why she hasn't lost her faith. So I sort of like that as well. So that's why I'm saying I think it does show both sides, and I think that you're going to lean in a certain direction the first time you watch this movie of what you think the message is supposed to be, and then when I think you sit back and watch it a second time, that you kind of see a little bit more going on, and they're just opening more thought-provoking talks. I keep saying thought-provoking, but I apologize, but it really is a thought-provoking movie.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about some of the other acting performances. There's one glaring thing in this movie that just really blew my mind in terms of acting, and it's the fact that Topher Grace is in it and does nothing in the movie. I was like,
the character needed to be there because for like obvious different distractions that kind of like plot hinged on those distractions. So that character needed to be there. I don't know if you needed to cast somebody with a name. You could have got anyone to play that role.
Yeah, I was like, but maybe that's part of the rug pull is you put a guy like Topher Grace in it that everybody knows. So you think that he's going to have a more vital role in this movie, that he's going to be the reason that something big happens.
It's like
overall.
What the heck was that show with that comedian from Saturday Night Live, and he's like on a desert island, and all of a sudden, like there's the beginning of one of the episodes, and Will Ferrell just is suddenly in there.
Yeah, this wasn't it wasn't on an island. This was The Last Man on Earth.
Great show.
Quick spoiler for that show, but it's a comedy show. But you see, Will Ferrell is just so they're on a beach. I will go into it briefly because this is the best. They're on a beach, and he was the last man on Earth. Then he found out there was a few other survivors, and the main character, and he shows up to the beach, and he had been kicked out of the little group of people. So he shows up to see what they're up to, and he's trying to spy on them. And and they have their little circle of people, and then all in the group of people is Will Ferrell just playing the acoustic guitar and singing along. And they see him from a distance. They're like, "Oh, who's that guy?" And so the girl that was with him, she's like, "I'll go scare them." So she like creeps up to him and just jumps out and scares him real quick. And Will Ferrell, without saying a single word in the entire show, just has a heart attack and dies.
And that was it.
And that was it. You got nothing from Will Ferrell after that. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, you're watching it just like, oh, cool, Will Ferrell's in this. And just immediately dies. But that's what it's like. It was like Topher Grace. You're like, oh, something's going to happen here because that's a somebody. And
and then he showed up at the door because he was like the one that was in charge, right, of the I don't even know what you would call him, like a church leader or something like that. But he showed up to the door, and you're like, oh, he knows something's up. He doesn't really trust this guy. He thinks that he might have the girls inside. And he does his fair share of questioning. And you're like, oh, okay, never mind. And then he leaves. Then he comes back, and you're like, oh, okay, good. He's pretty, like he knows something's wrong here. But no, it was just him doing the, he's hands him a pamphlet and was like, if I didn't take this opportunity, yeah. It's pretty
exactly. But that was pretty funny. Another thing on Hugh Grant's performance, and I was watching an interview about this movie, and a lot of his little lines that were kind of tossed in there were completely ad-libbed.
Yeah.
And he like the one where he's like, I never had a Wendy. Like that he just threw that in there. And it was such a good line because you're like, the fuck is he supposed to, what does he mean by that?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Especially the second time I watched it, because I knew what was going on in the basement. He's like, I've never had a Wendy. I was like, oh shit. That was a good line.
Oh, that's because he's got a bunch of women down in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good line.
I love the Monopoly analogy when he's going through doing the religion thing.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing was great, but also funny. It just was such a great scene.
Mhm.
And I do love that there was pushback on that scene. Like there wasn't just you just got that whole rationale and there was no pushback on the other side. So I'm glad there was pushback there as well. Again, I'm glad that there was always sort of a counter at some
Sort of.
points.
Part of the reason I think this movie was absolutely trashing religion is the religion that they picked to kind of be the main focus, and it's the Mormon religion, which I think is kind of easy to pick on because while you could pick out flaws in pretty much any religion and any kind of way of thinking, any kind of worldview, you can obviously pick things out. But Mormon kind of like the Mormon religion kind of gets a lot of flack for some of the things in their religion. So I feel like maybe the people who made this movie thought that they could pick on Mormonism safely. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they kind of bring it up in the movie where he's like, back in the day, Mormons would have a lot of wives, and now they've just kind of backed off that without giving a real reason. And I think that's part of the whole thing. But they do go around and pick out what's wrong with each one.
And that the way they did that was kind of with the Monopoly board game, right? Where you have like the original Monopoly is Hebrew, which was kind of the original monotheistic religion. And then you had Christianity, which was a spinoff of that. And then you had Islam, which is a spinoff of that. And then you have on the side is Mormonism, which is like the spinoff of the spinoff. So that was kind of it's part of the reason why I think they picked Mormonism, because it's easy to pick on.
I disagree with the reason why they picked Mormonism. I think they pick a religion like that because it requires even more faith. Like you have to really have faith and believe in those.
I think it might be. Sorry, finish your point. I apologize.
I think that you really have to have faith in Mormonism to continue to practice that religion, right? Because there is a lot of easy things to nitpick in that. So I think that religion is based on faith even more than other religions. Not that they're not all based on faith, but that one in particular is a little bit harder.
If something requires more faith, that just means it's further divorced from reality. I'm not
disagreeing with that. I think
it's much more simple than both of you are making it out to be. Whether or not you could pick on Mormonism or whatever religion you choose to pick on, or religion in general, I think this one just comes down to the fact that the Mormons are one of those religions, them and Jehovah's Witness, that go around and knock on doors, and they needed these girls to be knocking on doors to be invited into the house. I think it's just that simple. Yeah,
they needed the salesman, to his point.
They did kind of address that too with the they're like, why do you think Judaism is the smallest with only 0.2% of people believing in Judaism? It's like, because they don't go around knocking on doors.
Yeah. So that's a good point as well, Jesse.
Some of the details they put into this movie, I thought were just that they just fit in so perfectly. And there were things that would make you kind of guess. Jesse brought it up earlier. Like you thought it was going to go one way, it would go another way. And there were a couple of just details that I thought were particularly well placed. And you get this in a lot of A24 movies. And one of them was when they were in the initial room when they were first welcomed in, and he's talking about how he's going to get his wife. From the beginning, I knew there was no wife. You just knew there was no wife, although he played it very well. And I thought one of the most effective scenes in this movie is when he's like, finally, they're like, we need you to please go get your wife. He's like, all right, I'll go get my wife. So he goes and leaves the room. And then that's when Sister Bonds notices, and it's kind of like an oh shit moment where the candle just got blown out. And supposedly the wife is in the kitchen making blueberry pie. And she looks down at the candle that was just blown out, and it's blueberry pie scented. I was like, dude, that's such a good detail. Like, what a great scene. Like, they said something without saying it. I love how stuff like that can just be like interwoven so nicely without, something being just shoved in your face. Just really effective.
It was, yeah. So the movie poster that we got in America is Hugh Grant's face, and he's kind of pointing at the two little figures of the dolls. At least that's the only one that I've seen here. If you sift through the movie posters in other countries, and I'm glad this wasn't the movie poster for this country because it would have spoiled that perfect scene right there, or that little moment right there. But if you scroll through them, one of the movie posters is the word heretic. It's got the table, and it actually has the blueberry candle blown out on the table.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So like that was how much of a focus that was on that one little scene there, which is pretty interesting.
What's funny though is there is a blueberry pie.
There is.
There is,
is a
but
book
it wasn't
verified.
fresh, but it probably wasn't freshly baked, and that was kind of the excuse. But yeah, there was a damn pie the whole time.
Freshly poisoned.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a great detail. I think as soon as the light thing happens and he's twisting the light thing, that's my cue to be like, all right, time for us to go, because what is this nonsense? What is
They
this
did it-
haunted house you have me in?
Yeah, and they did a good job making it a situation where they couldn't leave, right? Where the door was locked. He's like, "It's on a timer. Isn't that normal?" No, but that's when you kind of start to see the plot sort of unravel for them, not so much for him. And one of the other creepiest scenes is when they're in the church room that he has there, and he's still kind of like playing the game. And then at one point he looks at them and he goes, "At what point did you realize there was no wife?" And you're just like, "Oh shit!" Like he just came out and said it. Now you know they're trapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just came out and said so many things. A lot of horror movies do this where the villain will kind of play with his food a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Where he's like, "Oh, what do you think about this going on?" But he was doing that the entire movie. Again, we already talked about how much he crushed his role here, but the fact that he was just kind of like doing a play-by-play in every single scene, just talking it out with him. It was just so strange because you just don't get that with a lot of killers in a lot of these movies.
Mhm. And that was kind of like that's who that character was. And not only was that who he was, that was what he was doing throughout the whole movie. So it didn't feel pushed on us like towards the end, like, oh, now he's just like suddenly he's just playing with his food. Like this is now we're gonna get the big, climax, and this is where the plot twists. It's like because now suddenly he's doing the thing, but he was doing this the entire time, so it was consistent, so it worked.
Yeah, exactly. Like to piggyback off that, a lot of movies you get the big explanation at the end of the movie, and it's a lot of times you don't need that explanation. Like I don't need this guy to explain everything that he was doing. I saw it happen, right? But he was doing it the whole time, which made it really work.
Yeah, there's a big difference between dialogue-driven movies and just exposition dumps, and this movie is heavily dialogue-driven, and I think it's pretty phenomenal throughout.
It's trickling exposition throughout the entire movie, which is much better than a dump.
It was almost like the whole movie's happening, and it almost feels like they're in a therapy session, and he's the therapist, and he's just telling them what they're supposed to think. Yeah, terrible Yelp reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to jump into?
I was going to say, I also think that I don't even know what you call them, but like the women with the blood dripping and the creepy ladies,
the prophets,
these were really well done. I thought the makeup on them was great. I thought they were terrifying looking. It was actually the first time I watched a movie where I was like, this is scary in a long time.
It was so scary. And the way he introduced it over the intercom when he's like, "You're looking at a living prophet of God," was just like, and just looking at her with the bleeding eyes, like, dude, that's scary.
Yeah, no, it was actually some scary scenes in this movie. I thought the set design on the basement was fantastic. It was such like a dingy, terrifying looking basement with really tall ceilings. You don't get that in a lot of basements, not in Massachusetts anyways, but really cool looking. It was just, it was very
I bet it's
cool.
even less likely in Utah, tall basements.
I think it's less likely everywhere. Where have you ever seen a tall basement?
Yeah, I mean, he had to specifically be on a cliffside like that. That's why the house was where it was, to make that even make any sense at all.
Worked on a house in Situate, Massachusetts that had 14-foot ceilings in their basement.
Wow.
Crazy.
They were actually just 8 feet, but Dave was the one standing in the basement.
Now, Situate is nice. It's a nice little town.
Yeah.
But I just saw a commercial. It was like an ad on Instagram or Facebook or something like that. And it was like, visit Situate. It was like a vacation thing for Situate in the winter. And this couple looks like they were having a terrible time. Like they're just like all bundled up, walking on the beach, like trying to pretend to enjoy themselves. I'm like, this is not well done.
There is nothing to do in Situate in the winter.
Yeah. Go to the restaurant. There's one.
Try not to die of exposure.
Yeah. Go stand on this windy dock in the winter. I don't know.
Go look at the beach that's usable 4 days a year.
Go to the lighthouse that won't open its door for you. I don't know. Anyways.
So yeah, let's jump into the ending now. And sort of each give our interpretations of what we think happened at the end.
Mhm.
Do you want to go first, Dave? Do you want me to take it?
Go ahead.
So I watched this movie twice, and I sort of, what I interpret the ending being is I think Sister Paxton dies.
Yep, I agree.
And
Yeah, she's dead.
and I think that at a certain point, everything you see doesn't really happen,
Mhm. I
is
agree.
my interpretation of this movie, where I don't think Sister Barnes comes back to life
I agree.
to kill him.
This sucks. We're all on the
Yeah,
same page.
damn it.
But I do see other interpretations that could be plausible. But I think the giveaway, I think there's two giveaways for me. Is one, she actually climbs out a window, which I don't think she would be able to do because he had everything else so locked up that she just finds this window that she can get out of upstairs.
Mhm.
Seems like that would be, for a guy that has everything planned out, overly lazy. And the second thing is the butterfly. And the butterfly is a massive callback
Mhm.
to Sister Paxton being the one to say that when she passed away, she'd like to come back as a butterfly and appear on the fingertips of someone, of her loved one, so that they know it's her. And you get
Also
that
referenced the butterfly theory, but that was an ancient Chinese theory that, or it was not even a theory. It's like a whatever, where it's a Chinese proverb where they're like, you have a dream about a butterfly, and is it you dreaming about the butterfly, or
yes.
are you in the dream of the butterfly dreaming of you? It's kind of like this. But anyways, there was that too. So the first time I saw it, I actually had two different interpretations of this. Were you done? I'm sorry.
So basically, I was just going to wrap it up with saying she looks and she sees the butterfly, and then she looks down and it's just gone.
Right.
So I think that's where I was like, okay, with those two pieces of information, I don't think she survived. I think she was seeing, because they even talk about seeing what you want to see right before you die.
Mhm.
So I think that is what is happening here, and I don't think she made it out of the basement. I'm not sure if Hugh Grant lives with the injury that he has at that point, but I definitely don't think that Sister Barnes comes back and kills him. I think that Sister Paxton takes that gets stabbed, and it's just kind of lights out for her at that point.
Yeah, so I had the same. So I also watched this twice, and the first time I watched it, I didn't catch a lot of the little things they said along the way that were kind of like tips that you catch on the second time. And that's the same with anything. You watch a movie twice, you're going to pick up on all the little stuff the second time you go through it because you know what's going to happen. So the first time I watched the movie and that butterfly scene at the very end happened, and she looks at the butterfly and suddenly it's gone. I was like, oh, she died right there. She just died. That was the whole thing, because I watched it with Seth, and I was like, because he didn't agree with me. And I was like, no, she just died right there. As soon as the butterfly died, that was the end of the movie. I mean, that was where she died. And the second time I watched it, I was like, oh shit, because they said something about when you die, you see your guardian angel, and your guardian angel you're going to see what you want to see. And I was like, oh shit, that makes sense. Because I thought it was a massive plot hole, the fact that Sister Barnes got up after having her jugular sliced 20 minutes prior. Like, you bleed out in seconds for that. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So it actually makes more sense that she didn't come back to life and that she was just seeing what she wanted to see, which is what they were saying happens after you die.
Yeah, I agree. Like that, obviously, like that is just, I think it's the most plausible ending to this movie.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you guys, and I don't think it's really up for as much interpretation as everybody's debating about it. It's like, no, she's dead. They did the butterfly thing. That chick, like Dave said, like, she would have bled out. That's not you. As someone who's had their throat slit so many times, what you don't do is lay down and pretend to be dead in plot.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna wait 20 minutes then and hit him in the head. Hopefully he comes back. No, that's not what you do. You panic.
Well, there is this. I mean, if you want to go into like medical theories to rationalize it, there are bursts of like last moments of people. It's happened with people in comas and stuff as well. Right before they die, they come out of the coma for 5 or 10 minutes or something. They have this burst of energy and are able to do that type of stuff and then they just drop dead.
Never
So-
the case when your carotid artery has been sliced.
I would agree.
0 times.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, if you're trying to justify it, if that was the true thing that happened, I'd have a bigger problem with this movie, I think, to the point. If people want to believe that she survived and she came through, maybe she didn't see the butterfly, sure, but I think the ending that we gave out is the most plausible by far.
Any negatives?
They did some stuff that we have to suspend disbelief on the basement, first of all, which is fine. I can do that.
Because the ceilings are too tall?
No, just because, well, I mean, it's not just the ceilings are too tall, it's an entire dungeon. And then you have to think about how this was created, how he made all this. Which is fine. You can justify it. You know what I can't justify? Like little things like this on a movie that's so well thought out. He wouldn't put a door on the basement that has a gap that's 8 inches wide that they could just see through.
Yeah.
It was driving me crazy that became a plot point, because I'm just like, everything is so well thought out in this house that unless he meant to do that, which, come on, then we're just going too far there. I didn't like that. Like, just like,
also the whole matches thing was complete.
This is gonna be my negative. I was like, what were they trying to do with the matches? And they made it such a major thing where they had to like get the matchbook close to them by pulling the rug, and they get the rug close enough, and they get the matches, and they go down there. What are they doing?
Just trying to light the wall on fire or something. I don't know.
I think they were just trying to start a fire so that people had to respond to it.
What were they trying to light on fire?
Weren't they trying to light the carpet on fire to get the house?
Yeah, but if you set I don't know if it was a carpet. I think it was one of their jackets. But if
she was trying to light the wall on fire. Either way, they were failing miserably.
Either way, like if you set the basement on fire, you're gonna burn to death before anyone sees anything from outside that house.
Oh no, you're right. She was just kind of holding the flame up next to the wall. I thought she was trying to light the wall on fire, but apparently
maybe there was
she was trying to light the
maybe there was like an
jacket
exhaust or something, or I don't know. Yes.
She was. You can see her right here. She has, so for audio listeners, we're describing what we're seeing here. There's one of them has like a jacket or something in her fist, and the other one is doing a poor job of lighting that or the wall on fire. I don't know. I thought she was trying to light the wall on fire. Either way, it just did absolutely nothing. They wasted too much time on that scene for it to do nothing.
I liked when he came down and took the match from her and just struck it and then handed it to her. Here's, what are you gonna fucking do?
yeah.
Here you go. And then what was my other negative?
I mean, you are panicking at that moment and you're just trying to do anything.
I guess, but they made it such a big like deal, where like they plotted. They're like, all right, he's
made
gone.
Topher Grace a big deal too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was just a red herring, but this isn't. I don't know if this is really a negative, but it made me laugh when I think it wasn't supposed to be funny, and it was when the prophet ate the cake or the pie, and now they're just waiting for her to die, and then she dies, and then it's just face first into her, and she's laying there. It's just there's no non-comical way to look at that. It's just somebody just face plants in their blueberry pie.
Yeah,
and then,
just very Three Stooges.
The entire next scene, which is a tense scene, is like all surrounding this person at the table with their face in the pie. I was cracking up. It was just kind of funny.
But also needed to be. It was deliberate because the position of the head was very important.
Yep.
For the rest of the movie. So
yeah, I don't know if I'd call that a negative. It was just it was something that was it would have been a lot scarier if it was a little bit different, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they were going for comic relief. But maybe they were just assuming that people wouldn't find somebody being poisoned to death comical. And here we are.
Do we want to give some scores to this movie?
Sure. I have this at a 4.5, 4.5 stars. I thought this was very good. I really enjoyed it. It was almost a 2-hour runtime, and it was one of those movies when it ended, I was like, I didn't really want that to be over. I wanted more out of this. Not like it didn't deliver, but like I just wanted it to keep going.
Yeah. Jesse?
Yeah, I got that one right about the same. I did it at a 4.6. Thought it was acted really well, shot well, kept my interest the entire time, and it was different.
I had a 4.5 as well. So I mean, we're all circling the same area. But I can see people that don't I mean, I think a lot of people that don't like this movie are just they don't like the dialogue driven stuff. They don't like the tension stuff. They want
I can tell
something
you
else.
exactly what people didn't like about this movie because I just read 50 different reviews because I was trying to find a funny bad one that I could tell, but none of them are funny. They're all just kind of sad. And the main takeaway from people who didn't like this movie are religious people who thought this movie was just bashing religion.
Mm.
So that was like the main takeaway, which is kind of like, I feel like that was the point of this movie. I know you guys, I don't think you guys agree with me on that. I think this movie absolutely was taking shots at religion in general. And I think that if that was their intention, then it's not a negative, right? Even if you're religious, like if you're religious and you're like, this movie exists for this purpose and they executed that purpose because here I am mad about it. That's not a negative, right?
Yeah, I just disagree. I just felt like they were trying to counterpoint more in this movie than trying to.
So what do you think the overall, because this is an A24 movie, they all have their agendas and messages and allegories that they're trying to push. What do you think was the point of this movie? Because there's no way this movie was just existed just to be an entertaining movie. This movie obviously had some sort of meaning.
So I think it's part of what we talked about earlier, where they're using religion as talking about systematic control through religion. And I think it's also showing that pushback is what makes that control falter. It doesn't always make it crumble, but as soon as any of that control got pushed back on it, it was faltering. And they had to switch gears and do something else and try to find a different way to control. And if there's enough pushback, then the control breaks.
Yeah. I mean, did the control break though? Because she still ended up where he wanted her at the end of the movie.
But if they had both pushed back at the same time, he might have. Right?
I don't think he wanted her dead at the end of the movie. I think he wanted her to be a prophet.
Yeah,
I think he was collecting some more profits.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
let us know what you think. I mean, drop it in the comments. Tell us what you think. What is your interpretation? Have you seen this movie? Sorry, Rob, were you going to make one more point?
Just that he might have died as well. Like because he gets stabbed.
I think everyone dies.
Yeah.
I think everyone dies. Yeah, I think he dies from his stab wound. I think all the prophets die because they're locked in a cage, and I think both the girls are dead.
Yeah. So I mean, you could interpret it that way as well, like where the control did break. It took other people dying for that control to break, but the other people that are in the cages are now gonna sort of be saved, I guess. Maybe.
No, they're gonna die.
They're in cages and everyone around them is dead.
Yeah, but I mean, people are gonna go to that house at some point, so who knows? I mean, we're pushing that at this point.
Yeah.
It could go either way. But yeah, so I think that to me is the overall message of the movie more than anything. It's yeah, you can look at it as religion, you can look at it as a government that controls people, you can look at it as a family dynamic, right? Like just you could break it down to different levels. And if you have a tyrant in any of those positions, or government or religion, or a father or mother figure that forces so much control on stuff, that once they get the pushback, a lot of times it creates chaos and makes it worse for a little bit sometimes, but sometimes it's better. So I think that's sort of the allegory they're going for with this movie. I don't think it's specific. I mean, they use religion as the example, but I think you can interpret it. But I think you brought it up, like control is what they're looking at more than anything in this movie.
Right. I think you could even make the argument that Hugh Grant's character was portrayed as the atheist, or even like to the point of an anti-theist, which gets to the point where if you obsess over it to a point, it almost becomes a religion. And then even that fails in the end. When you think you have absolute control, you don't.
Yeah. Very thought-provoking movie. I've said it 100 times, but it was. Let's get out of here. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this movie. Give us your rating. Let us know. Was it about control? What did you think happened at the end? Do you agree with all three of us, even though I'm shocked we all had the same interpretation? Many of you might not have. So let us know in the comments. We'll catch you next time here at HTGS Reviews. Later.